welcome this evening to the Expansion Blueprint series. This is part 2. My name is Dr. Nkem Ezamama, and it's really nice to see everyone today. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks for coming. It's going to be a great evening. So like I said, this is week 2 of the Expansion Blueprint series, and we are going on a journey together. And I know that it will fundamentally transform, your thoughts about success, freedom, about impact. Last week, I said that this wasn't just another work-life series, and I meant it. It's really about creating an entirely new way of achieving, of leading, and of living. This is meant to be way more interactive. So even though I can't see your faces, I think I know most of you here. So use the chat, like I said, and then questions if you have any. And then we could take it from there. And then take notes. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is a little dense, but I think that I think you're up for the challenge. And I'll tell you exactly. We have handouts. I'll tell you exactly how to get them in the next few slides. But lastly, I would love some feedback. So if you have, tell me what's working, what's not working, how I can improve, and how I can better serve you. I would greatly appreciate that. So last week, we talked about the creation of my expansive circle, and a lot of people had questions about it. And so I wanted to just take a little bit of time to really talk about it. And when I think about the expansive circle, it is where we expand together, we achieve together, and we transform together. And inside of the community, some of the things that you will get is a daily support and expert training, and you'll also get implementation tools and resources. And if you missed last week, this will all make sense as we continue to go along. But there's a lot of high-level networking and connections that are happening in the community with live sessions and workshops just like this one. We'll have tools to help with success tracking, with accountability. We'll then even move forward and start creating monthly masterminds and expert sessions. All of this is just to say that, if you feel like you're called to live a larger life, if you feel like you're called to impact outside of the work that you're doing, of your daily 9 to 5, then join our community, because it's going to be a chance for you to grow, for you to build on your skills and leverage what you have and then share it with the world. So that's exactly kind of the framework behind it. It's not just another networking group or for professionals. It's really a community of purpose-driven achievers who are committed to redefining what success really looks like. So the link was just put on the screen. And if you just click on that link and sign up, I think that's our next slide. So I'll just move to the next one. So for the first 50 members, and this is limited to just the first 50 members, you will get exclusive access to all the things I mentioned, but you'll get it for free, because I think that it's really important for us to work together to build something amazing together. And so that's why this is something that I think is really crucial. So like I said, you will get exclusive access, and you'll get monthly implementation sessions. We will have success partner networks, so you have accountability every step of the way. You will have a complete resource library with priority support, and then you will have the community to kind of build on what you've already started, what you're learning today. And so that's some of the things that we will be doing today. So I just put that on the screen again for you. So go ahead and join that. And if you're one of the first 50 people, when you sign up, if you just write the word founder, FOUNDER, in the coupon code, you'll get full access to that, and you will get access for a full year. Okay, so let's jump in. So the first thing before we get in, there's a lot of housekeeping. If you are on your phone, if you look at the bottom, right, there are 3 dots, I believe. If you click on that, you should see handouts. And if you click on the handouts, you will get all the handouts that are available for today's session. It was also sent to your email, your last reminder email that came today. There's a link, so you can go there and download it as well. But as we work through, you have 2 options. If you're on your computer, if you click on apps, from apps, you can click handouts, and you'll be able to get the handouts. So the first handout is all of the 5 handouts together, and then each one of them is just broken down by A, B, C, D, E. So all of that should be made accessible to you right now. So feel free, like I said, to print it. If you already did that ahead of time, or as we go, you can definitely just follow along. Now let's jump right in. So last week we talked about breaking free from success traps, right? Today, I want us to start with a simple truth that I've learned from working with a ton of professionals, and it's that freedom isn't found, it's designed. If you look at the two images on your screen, right, they represent the same person with the same skills, with the same expertise, and the same potential for impact. But the only difference is that one is really letting life happen to them, and the other is designing it. So when I look at you guys, all of you who are on this webinar, I see designers, I see architects of possibility. And today we're going to start creating that blueprint. So I'm pretty excited. Last week, one of our participants who was in the Breaking Free class sent me a message, and honestly, it gave me chills. He said, for the first time in 8 years, I didn't start my day with other people's priorities in my inbox. Instead of diving straight into work, I took my coffee outside and spent 30 minutes planning my day my way. And he said, and you know what's amazing about that? I ended up having one of the most productive days that I've had in months. All he did was make one decision, and that's all it took. He designed his mornings differently, and he just made one small change. But here's what is truly fascinating, right? That one small change almost just triggered a chain reaction, almost like a domino effect, and it actually increased that day exponentially. Why, you might ask? It was because he was working from choice, not obligation. He was working from purpose, not pressure, and that was the big difference that he made. So think about what one small decision that you can take from today. I will throw a lot of information at you, but the thing is that in order to see change, you just have to start. So pick one small thing today, one freedom that you want to work on, and then build on that. And then think about how much change you can do, how much of a chain reaction that you can create with just one small change. Okay, so this brings us to something that's a little counterintuitive, right? Most people, when they think about freedom, they think, they don't think that freedom means no structure. But when you look at this garden and the garden in the picture, it's precisely because of its careful design that it creates a sense of like freedom and peace. And so it actually you need structure. And if you think freedom doesn't need structure, that's a lie. Look at that picture and it'll kind of tell you the same thing. And that's true also for your life and your practice. Freedom isn't chaos. It's intentionally designing the things that will help you move you forward. I'll give you a quick example, right? When I started decreasing my shifts in the ER, I thought for me, freedom would be like, I got to do whatever I wanted, wherever I wanted. But instead, it left me feeling somewhat scattered. I felt uncertain and almost felt trapped. But what I discovered really changed everything. And I discovered that real freedom isn't just about having time or money. It's about creating almost 4 specific types of freedoms that I think actually work together. So if you think about the 4 freedoms I'm talking about time freedom, financial freedom, location freedom, and purpose freedom. When you think about time freedom, you think about having control over your schedule, right? And it's not just really having more time, but it's truly, truly owning your time. So imagine deciding like when to work, not having your calendar decide that for you. And you might be listening to this as a professional and you might not be there yet, but you being here today is working towards building that time freedom. And then when you think about financial freedom, think about like money that works for you, not the other way around. So you're thinking about building wealth that serves your life's decision, but it doesn't necessarily consume it. And then when you think about location freedom, it's the power to choose where to make your impact, whether it's your home office or, like a beach in Bali or a hospital in your hometown. You get to decide. You get to decide what's important to you. And then when you think about purpose freedom, it's, think about creating impact that really aligns with your values. You think about making a difference on your own terms, not someone else. What matters to you? When you have purpose freedom, you can think about that. So I want you to do something. I just want you to pause for a second and think about what brought you here today, right? Which of these freedoms are you craving the most? Put it in the comments. If 1 or 2 people just put like, what freedom are you craving the most that you think that like, man, I really want to achieve this freedom today. And then that's something that you need to think about. Oh, Solomon, I didn't see that. I'm glad it's working for you right now. But what is one freedom that like you're really craving? Is it time freedom? Is it financial freedom? Is it location freedom? Or do you want to make impact on a larger scale? And it might even be another freedom that you're thinking that you really want. But if you are bold enough, toss it in the comments, drop it in the chat. I just want to kind of hear what people want to work on, what they want. Dario said he wants financial freedom. That's great, and that's now he can start thinking about how he can build on with the things that he needs to do to build on financial freedom. And here's what's fascinating as other people are thinking and typing, and I love that. Thank you guys for being for joining in the conversation and engaging. I think that you will gain the most if you do that. Tinu said location freedom. I think for me, I probably want to work towards location freedom as well. But this is what's fascinating, right? When you start designing one freedom intentionally, then the others will naturally expand and they'll naturally take shape. So as you're working on location freedom, then you start thinking, when you start figuring out what location you want to be or how you want to use then you start thinking, how do I want to use my time? And then from there, you might start thinking like, I want to build wealth that serves my life vision. And then you start thinking about purpose freedom. So it all kind of works together. And Bidwell Pharmacy said purpose freedom. I agree. And Solomon said both financial and location freedom. And like I said, Solomon, they all work together. And when you start working on one, the others start expanding as well. So this is the first part. So this is part one or part A. If you want to pull up your Freedom Design Workbook. What I want us to do right now is I want to start working on your current reality, because you can't design your future or you can't think about the future if you don't understand where you are today. So if you have it open, and if you don't, I'll kind of guide you through it so you and I can work through it and we can engage in the chat. But I want you to be honest, and I want you to rate yourself from 1 to 10 on some of the freedoms that we just talked about. And I will share with you kind of where I was after we kind of go through it. So when you think about time freedom, scale of 1 to 10, where are you right now? Do you control your own schedule? And some of these answers might be a 1 or a 0 or a 2. But remember, you have to figure out where you are today in order to build on that. Then the second question I want to ask you is, can you be there for the moments that matter? So like the big moments that matter, can you be there? Do you have enough time freedom right now to be there for all those times? And then the question I want to ask you is, are you working when you're at your best? So, if you have time freedom, Solomon said a 4, very honest. And Solomon, I'll tell you, when I first did this, I was a 2 for time freedom. And so that's something that like we have to start thinking about, right? And then when we think about financial freedom, is your money working harder than you are right now? Have you built systems, or even streams of income that go beyond trading your time for money right this second? And does your wealth serve your life vision? So I want you to pause and just think about those things. Like, are you working harder than your money? Is your money working harder for you, working harder than you right now? And that's something that I want you to pause and think about if you had to rate yourself right now. And when you think about location freedom, right now, can you work from anywhere? Can you work from anywhere? Can you just decide to pick up and move right now? Do you choose where you make your impact, or is someone else choosing that for you? And the next question I want to ask you is, are you present where you want to be? So those are like, if you just had to pause and if you were honest with yourself, what would you say right now? What would you grade yourself from 1 to 10? Can you work from anywhere, or are you present where you want to be right now? Put it in the chat. If you're following along, just like toss a number in the chat so that I know that, and then it's for you, because then you know where you're starting from. And then when you think about purpose freedom, does your work align with your values? Where you are right now, what you're doing, does that align with your values? Are you making impact that you're truly capable of? The last one that I'll ask you is like, does your success serve a deeper purpose? That's something that if you just had to pause and you had to ask yourself, that's some of the questions that I definitely want you to answer. And I will tell you what some of my numbers are. When I first did this for time freedom, I gave myself a 2, because the truth is, I was missing every single opportunity. I was missing family events, and that's because I was working all the time. For financial freedom, I gave myself a 7 because I think, I have a good income, but it was completely tied to my time. So that's something else that I had to think about. No, no, for the first 2. Okay, that's good. Thank you for sharing that. And then when I thought about location freedom, I gave myself a 1 because honestly, I was chained to the hospital. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't think. This is exactly what I was doing. And when I think about purpose freedom, I think I gave myself a 4 or 4 or 5. My thought was that I was helping people, but it's not in the way that I knew that I could. And so, but that was then, right? These numbers are completely different today for me. And it's not because I got lucky. It's because I did the work. I learned to design my freedom intentionally. The things that mattered to me, I wanted to do them and to improve on them. And that's exactly what I want you to learn today. So now that you know where you're starting from, let me show you exactly how you can design your freedom step by step. And for those of you, if you want to pause for a second and just think and write some of those answers, because it builds on itself. So I want to show you something that is costing a lot of successful professionals millions of dollars and countless precious moments. And that's something that I call the time money trap. And this is exactly what it looks like. The more successful you become, the more expensive your time gets. And the more expensive your time gets, the harder it is to buy your freedom back. So I want to say that again, just so that you can pause and hear that. The more successful you become, which is a good thing, the more expensive your time gets. So you're working so hard for a certain income. And so the more successful you get, that time matters so much more, becomes more costly. And the more expensive your time gets, the harder it is to buy your freedom back. So take, for instance, you're making, I don't know, $2,000 an hour, but you're missing out on every single family event. Your kids don't know you. You're not building relationships. That cost would be too much, right? Because the truth is that you've built a prison out of your success. So how can we counteract this? That's what I want us to be thinking about as we keep going on. So this is how the trap evolves, right? So every single person here tonight starts in one of these quadrants. You either have low time and low money, so you're trading your time directly for money, for your dollars, and you're working really hard, but you're barely getting ahead. You're barely making any money. And this is like the traditional employee trap. And then you have quadrant 2, which you think about as like high time and then low money. So you have lots of freedom, but you're struggling financially. So this is like the typical early retirement trap. So like when you retire early, but you don't have all the systems in place, then you have lots of freedom, but you don't have a ton of money. And this feels like freedom without impact. And then think about low time and you have high money. And this is like the classic successful professional, right? They're wealthy, but very time poor. And this is some of us in this conversation, in this chat today, or in this webinar tonight. And you could think about that as like the golden handcuffs. But what we all want to achieve and what we want to aspire is freedom. It's quadrant 4, which is you have high value and you have low time requirements. And so you have money that works for you and impact without sacrifice. That is what you have to be thinking about in everything that you do as you're building this life, this expansive life that you want to go after. This is how you have to start thinking about it. And the secret is not necessarily moving from one quadrant to another. So you don't have to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. You have to redesign your relationship with time and money simultaneously. So even before we keep going, I want you to start thinking about like your areas of expertise. How can you tap into that? So that's just as you're here and you're thinking, what is your area of expertise? And we're going to build into that. So this is kind of how everything changes, right? When you look at that scale, the value scale, it's like the value scales linearly with time. So it looks like this, right? But impact can scale exponentially. So like the more impact you make, the more value that you create. That's something that you have to start thinking about. And I want to show you, remember I told you to be thinking about your specific areas of expertise. I want to show you how these 3 specific multipliers work. So think about expertise multiplication. You need to turn your knowledge into systems. And you have to scale your impact without scaling your time. And I'm going to go into this and I want to explain that. So think about what can you do that you can build into systems and then kind of leverage that? So think about maybe creating protocols or creating courses or whatever it is that you can now use to train hundreds of people. And then think about value multiplication, right? You create it once and then you deliver infinitely. And so it just keeps working for you. What you're doing is you're building assets instead of trading your time. So you do it once, you do it well, you do it really good, you make it something that is very valuable. And then from there, the value just starts multiplying without you having to do anything. And then the third one is time multiplication. So you have to make time work for you, and time cannot work against you. So you have to convert your active income into passive growth. So you have to start thinking, how can I convert what I'm doing now to start using it to like build things that work for me while I sleep? So think about, the best way I can explain to you that is real estate, right? When you start building a real estate portfolio, you're generating income while you sleep. And so now you're not only building active income, which you work, which is your daily work, you're also building passive income. This equation, when you think about it, it will transform your relationship with time and money forever. And it is value times leverage equals freedom. In a few slides, we will add systems to it. But for right now, let's think about it as just value and leverage, which is going to equal freedom. So what is value? Value is like your unique insight that you can share. And if you think about it, impact is that value that you create. So what is it like? What can you give to the marketplace? And then leverage is how you deliver it. So think about, instead of delivering it one to one, you can now do one to many. And that's how you start leveraging your skills. And then the freedom is what comes from it. So I'll give you an example of a physician that I know, and he really used this system to really build freedom. So his value or his impact was his unique surgical approach. So he had this unique surgical approach that he figured out, he created it. And then what he did is how he leveraged it. He created training systems. So now what he does is that he teaches hundreds of physicians while he gets to operate less. And his income, I kid you not, has tripled, and his surgical hours have decreased by like 65 to 70%. So I want you to be thinking, remember what I told you in the beginning, right? I'm giving you a lot of information and I'm giving you a lot of ideas. You might not, it might be too much for you to go and implement all of this in one day. But what if you took one small thing? What if you figured out how to create? What if you figured out what your value is and what your impact is, and then figure out how you could leverage it? Maybe that's the one assignment that you take away today. But yes, so this is how I want you to find your specific leverage point. So this is, and all of, like I said before, all of the handouts should already be accessible to you. And if anybody's having a hard time, please just let me know in the chat. But this is going to be handout B, which is your leverage analysis section. I want you to kind of think about designing your ideal week, not someday, right now. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know that today I put a post early this morning and how the idea of the word later is deceptive. So you always say, I'll do it later, or I'll start later. But I want you to stop putting it off and do it now. What would that look like if you don't let that get stolen from you, and you actually take action and you do it right now? And so when I want you to think about designing your ideal week, right, I want you to identify your knowledge assets. So this is really, really important. I want you to pause and just think about this for a second. What do you know that others need? So what is like your knowledge asset? What is that one thing that you know that others need? Or what is something that people always ask you about, or they always ask for your help? That could be your skill. That could be your area of expertise. Why don't you leverage that? What is something that where do you see patterns that others miss? That's something that can be a pain point for others that then you can use to build something amazing. And then we'll move on to system opportunities, right? What do you repeat often? What's something that you do all the time that you're like, I probably should systematize this? Or what could you template? What's something that you've done over and over again that you're like, I really should just build a template for this thing? That's how you have to start thinking about system opportunities. What can you teach? I'll give you an example, right? And I'm about to create a course on personal branding and how, because in the 21st century, right, your business card is really your personal brand. And so that's something that can easily be taught, that I know that people really want to figure out, like, how they stand out in the world, like how they show up. How do they show up online? How do they show up in their business? How do they show up at work? It's like trying to create that. That's something that I know is a need. And that's something that, we're about to create. But so I want you to sit down and just think about, what is that something that you could teach? And then when you think about time multipliers, right? Where could you batch similar tasks? So what could you do together, that would buy back some of your time? Another thing to think about is the concept of who, not how, right? So who can you delegate some of the tasks to? This might be a time where you're starting to build something on the side that you might not be able to afford a full assistant, or maybe you can get a virtual assistant. And so this is how you now start buying some of your time back. But at the end of the day, I want you to start thinking, where we are today, what can you automate? Because whatever you can automate, I want you to get rid of it. I want you to do that so that you can build your time, you can buy back your time and start using it in the creation process, and start figuring out what your knowledge assets are, and then hone in on that. So this is a roadmap out of the time money trap that we've kind of talked about, as we start going into creating space. The first one is awareness, right? I want you to track where your time really goes. I have this timer right here, and it times, like, for certain tasks I use it, and it has, like, I've got this on Amazon, 3, 5, 25, 30 minutes. And then there's another one I knew it was going to be. There's another one I have that has up to 60 minutes. But I want you to kind of time everything that you do. And this is very easy, because then when you start timing what you do, you will find that you waste a lot of time, right? You'll find that, like, all your time, you don't use all your time, and a task that you thought could take you an hour and a half really should take you maybe 30 minutes. So, and then as you start getting aware of your time, I want you to figure out what your highest value activities are. What are the things that only you can do? That's where you should use your time. All the other things, I want you to start delegating. I want you to start automating. I want you to start building systems. And then when you think about how to design it, right? Start thinking of your leverage points. Remember, no longer one to one, think one to many. How can you create your multiplication system? Like, it's no longer me doing it to one person. It's like, I want to take it to 100, to 1,000. And then in all of this, you still need to build a support structure. And we'll talk more about that. But then you can move on to the implementation phase, right? I'll say this again and I'll repeat it a few times. It's one thing. So what is that one high impact change that you need to make? Start with that, and then measure it. If you don't measure it, it doesn't count. Just remember that. If you don't measure it, it doesn't count, because you need to see how progressive you are, what progress you're making. And so you have to measure it. And then I think you just need to adjust as you go along. Now, I'll say this, and I want you to hear this, right? Freedom isn't about doing less. It's not about just free time. It's really about doing what matters, because then it opens the doors to other things. Now, before I tell you that, I want you to also realize that, remember that you have non-negotiables. Figure out what those are. And then also add growth activities into that. So how are you growing every day? How are you learning? How are you moving yourself forward? And then think about also, like, the maintenance tasks, the things that you need to do every day, and then everything else. So start thinking about, before you start creating space and making time, think about those things that are like your non-negotiables, the things that you need to get done, and then everything else falls into that. Imagine if you took 2 hours every day, if you blocked out 2 hours 3 times a week, or maybe not even every day, maybe just 3 times a week. And imagine if you put that towards building something, if you put that towards starting something, if you put that towards writing a book. Imagine what that could generate for you. If you put that towards buying back some of your time, imagine what that could look like for you in terms of your return on investment. That's what you have to start thinking about. And that's how you need to start identifying different escape routes, because that's what we're trying to build here. Much as we're trying to build a system and a freedom map, it's like leaving the things that are not doing you any good, and building something that is bringing you a ton of good. So last week we talked about, kind of breaking free. Then this week we talked about breaking free from the time money trap. There's something that I want to share with you that's really counterintuitive, right? In creating space, because that's the next point. So after we've kind of broken free from some of these traps, we now need to create space. And then we now need to start adding to it, like how to build wealth, right? Look at this calendar that you're staring at. It's literally a blank calendar. Most people will see this as like, just like, they'll see space as a void to fill. So it's like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. But in design, in music, in life, space isn't empty. It's where possibility lives. I want you to just hear that again. Space isn't empty. It's where possibility lives. So what can you create with the time that you have? Or how can you start building time and creating space to then do the things that really matter? I had a conversation with one of my physician investors, and he shared something profound with me. He said, for the first 5 years, like, he has space to think. Like, he was so cluttered with day-to-day activity, things that just wasn't serving him. And like he said, it was in these spaces that, like, I have started to create some of my best ideas. And I've also started to build deep connections and really make real impact. Imagine if that's what you say. Imagine if that's part of like your growth, where you're like, now I can create all this space to like build, to create, to start, to empower, to impact, whatever it is that you want. But it's not always going to look that way. Some weeks are better than others. Like, for instance, like this week was extremely busy for me, and I didn't have a lot of space to create and to make magic happen. And that's okay. You'll have seasons like that in life, but it's like you have to become very, very intentional about it, because that's when it really matters. So when you think about the spaces that you need to create, right, you need to design. I've talked about it. You need to have a creation space. Where do you, like, where's a place that you do your highest value work? Make that space available. Where is your energy at its peak? That is part of your creation space. Always think about it like your zone of genius. Where do you get work done? And then I said it last week, relationships matter. And so you really have to make space for connection. Think deep relationships, meaningful conversations, truly being present. That actually really, really matters. And then when I think about renewal space, you always have to keep growing. You need to invest in yourself. You need to, in order to build and grow, you have to pour back into yourself. I've asked mentor after mentor after mentor, and I've gotten the same thing. Like, you have to pour back into yourself. You have to learn to build and grow yourself, because your best self is then what you give to others, and that's how your impact grows. A lot of high achievers are actually great about filling their space, and that's what I want you to learn how to do today. So I'll share something with you that I've done, and this is a habit that I've created. And the answer is yes, you can take it with you, use it, do whatever you want with it. But every week, not every week, every month, I take half a day off. And that half day is to create, is to reflect, it's to turn off laptops, turn off phones, and really just to reflect and give me space to like come up with new creative, innovative ideas. And then I take that and then I build on that. And so I take one day off every quarter. This is one day that you probably can't get a hold of me, but this is like a day to, like, once again, go deep on creation, go deep on building, go deep on innovating and figuring out processes that work and things that don't work. My question is, can you do something like that? Absolutely. If you really sat down and audited all the time that you spend doing things that you're not supposed to be doing, you will be able to create half a day a month and a full day a quarter where you just think and build. And you might not have to do this alone. So you could do this with a partner, you could do this with a spouse, you could do this with a friend, you can do this with a sibling. If you don't want to do it alone, if you just need accountability, you should do that. And in the community, we create accountability pods so that you can have that opportunity to grow as well. So I want us to create your ideal week. And this is, I think this should be workbook C, which is your space design template. I want you to identify your power zones, right? Where are you at your creative best? Where do you get done? Like, where do you do your highest value work? That you have to make sure that that is, that's available to you. And then where do you need to go to build deep connection for meaningful relationships? And when do you require renewal? For me, that looks like I said, half a day every month and a full day every quarter, because I need to make time for growth and I have to be selfish about it. We just kind of skimmed through designing your space, right? I want you to take the time. Our team has put in a ton of work in creating these workbooks for you to really go spend some time and then review it in detail. The whole idea is that the exercises and the questions, they help you think, and they, like, they open your mind to think about what's possible, to be able to go and then create your best life. But you have to do the work. And so spend some time, like, we can cover all of it in this hour and a half. So it's on you to then decide, how am I going to improve? How am I going to build on what I know in order to create my best life? Now, space without boundaries, it's going to dissolve, right? So you need to almost have like a protection around the things that matter. And I talked about that briefly, but you need hard boundaries. So what are your non-negotiables? Because this has to work long term, right? So figure out your non-negotiables, figure out your protected time, figure out your key relationship moments, and then figure out your soft boundaries, the things that are flexible but intentional. And then when you think about, I want you to think about open space. So also still have some space for spontaneity and flow, because that's actually sometimes where the best creation and the best thinking happens. So when you start thinking about how you can implement this, right, it could look like creating like a morning space that becomes really sacred for you. So that's something that you can think about. Now, with everything, right, we have to figure out where we are today. I want you to audit your current space. So again, I want this to be so interactive. So toss stuff in the comments as you're listening. But when you think about your creation space, I want you to rate it from 1 to 10. Do you have interrupted time for your best work? So does that look like a no? I don't. I'm working all the time. I don't even have any space at all to really build something that I know is on my heart, to live to live an expansive life and then to impact others. Is your energy aligned with your key tasks? So when you're doing the things that matter, how do you feel about it? And then do you even get to access your zone of genius where nobody else can tap into it but you? What do those numbers look like? If you had to take a second to be honest with yourself, what does that look like? And then as people are writing in the comments, I want you to think about your connection space, right? Are you fully present with your clients, with your patients? Do you have quality time with loved ones? That is also important. And then are your relationships deepening? If you had to rate yourself from 1 to 10, what would that be? And you have to be honest, you have to be vulnerable, because like I said, the more you audit, this is how you're going to start growing, right? And then your renewal space, we talked about this. Where do you have time to think strategically? Do you have space to grow? Is your life just like filled with minuscule mundane tasks that are not moving you forward? Take the time to think about this to really assess how you're going to grow and move forward. And then, so for the next 7 days, I want you to think about doing something. For day one, I want you to audit and assess where you are. Think about how you're using your time. And then think about the things that drain you. Can you snip that? Can you get rid of that? And then day two, I want you to start thinking about designing and planning. So pick power blocks, pick some time where you're like, this is the best time that I can do the things that I need to do to move me forward. And I want you to set boundaries. And so the next 3 to 5 days, that looks like implementing and then adjusting. Remember what I told you, if you don't measure it, it doesn't count. So monitor your results and then refine your approach every time. And then in the next, like, day 6 and 7, I want you to start integrating and expanding on what you're doing. And then this is how, and then when you do that, you can address challenges. So the things that didn't work, and then you can maybe like reiterate what works, or what doesn't work, and then fix it. I just want you to try and test me, right? If you did this for 7 days, you easily could create 10 extra hours of like high value time and space without reducing the quality of what you did. So let that sink in. Imagine buying back that much time to start building what you know that you're capable of. Your future self will be so grateful for the amount of time and work that you're putting into what you're doing today. So We've talked about, this is the last section that we'll talk about. So we've talked about creating space, right, in order to build your freedom. I want us to address something that's very critical. It's how do you build wealth that expands your freedom rather than constraining it? So just think about it. What are you doing today that is helping you truly build wealth? And a lot of successful professionals, you might be in this chat, you might be in this webinar tonight, they fall into this wealth trap, right? It's like the more you earn, the less free you become. And then it feels like that your wealth owns you, and rather than like your wealth serving you. And like, what is the purpose of it if that's what it ends up being? If your wealth requires your constant presence, then you might feel poorer today than you felt than when you were making a lot less. So think about that. Like, if what you're doing requires your constant presence, your constant effort, your constant time, then you're just replacing money for something else. You're just replacing it for another freedom. But what if your wealth could work for you, right? Instead of you working for it? What if every dollar that you've earned brings you more freedom instead of less? That is what we want to talk about today when we think about the wealth paradox. So there are three specific areas of wealth that you need to start thinking about. I talked about this earlier when I talked about time, but it's your expertise wealth. So again, I'm going back to, what do you do that nobody else does? Or what is a need that people come to ask you for that you can then build on and create something? So your expertise and your knowledge, imagine if you could monetize that efficiently. Like, as long as people will be willing to pay for anything if you give them value, if there's value behind what you're doing. So your high value focused time is going to be is going to focus on your expertise wealth. That is, like, if you think about that, like, that is worth it, because at the end of the day, then you start building systems, and then you start leveraging your time, and that's when you get true freedom. So think about, I talked about expertise wealth, and the next thing I'm going to talk about is systems wealth, right? You now have that knowledge, and you've turned it into assets. Now you can scale, now you create scalable solutions for the problems. Then you can build passive income potential. That's how it starts. So you might not get all of this today, right? But if you start building, if you start taking the time to figure out your expertise, then you can build on that. And then the last one is investment wealth, right? This is where money is working for you. So think about like strategic asset growth, think about investing, think about freedom focused returns. One of the things that I talked about earlier was real estate investing as a vehicle for your investment wealth. It's something to think about. So now, how do you kind of architect and bring all of these streams together? For your expertise, like, you have to optimize those high value activities. I told you before, I think one to many, right? So think about creating premium offers for the people that you know that really deserve it, that really want it. And then also think about like efficient delivery, right? And then replicate it. That's how you start. So you figure out your expertise and then figure out your high value activity, then create premium offerings from that because you know people need it. And then you can start replicating it. If I had to ask you right now, and you don't have to put in the comments, but think about, how could you do this? Like, what could this look like for you? Take a specific area of your life that is like, this is the one thing that I do. How can you think about then, turning that into a way to serve others and creating premium offerings from that? It could look like different things for different people, but then how do you package that knowledge, right? You want to think work while you sleep. You want to think build while you sleep. You want to think make while you sleep. Start thinking about scalable platforms that you can use and then automate delivery. So, you can turn something into a lifelong, it just keeps producing lifelong asset. That's what that could look like. And I shared with you about like strategic real estate opportunities. I'm going to do a webinar on really how to dive into real estate. And that's it. That's a little bit about what I do at Phoenix Capital. And so you think about like how you can create this strategic real estate opportunities that then appreciate over time. But also in investment strategy, you can think about business ownership. So, you can think about buying a business, you can think about building a business, you can think about entrepreneurship. Is that if that's something that you're called to, that's something that excites you. That might not necessarily be passive in the beginning, but then you can build on that to eventually make it passive. If any of this is like a little confusing, please ask me questions. I could definitely think through something that you're doing and kind of help you break down one of these systems or think through one of these designs. And I'll say this, if you, I think I'll make sure that I put my contact at the end, or I'll just let you know it. If it's not on the screen, I can't remember if I put it, but if you definitely want to reach out to me, I think it's super, I would love for that to happen, so that maybe you and I can walk through something that you're dealing with, something that you're growing, something that you're trying to grow, and how you want to increase your impact. So remember that formula I talked to you about, which was value, which is what you do, leverage it, think about one to many, and now we're going to add systems to that. And so systems is how now we can scale it. So we've thought about leveraging it, and now we want to really scale it. So that's how you start thinking about exponential growth. This is where you start buying back your time. This is where you start thinking about financial freedom. This is how you start thinking about purpose freedom, because then if you work and you can systematize this, then you can do this from anywhere. And then that way you can now figure out what it is you want to, what your purpose is, and how you want to build impact, which is what we're going to be talking about next week. So let's talk about a little bit about like mapping your wealth expansion. This is workbook part D, so it's the fourth one. And this is and kind of what I want to help you understand is like, how can you optimize your current value? So what are you doing today? Because a lot of what we do is to look into what's going on today and how we can build on that. So remove low tasks, like low value tasks, get rid of it. And like I said before, kind of start thinking about how you can create premium offerings. If you have something truly valuable, people will want to patronize you. People will want to, because they're getting something valuable in return, and so they will want to support. And then think about building systems. So like key processes, a lot of the things that I've said are building on each other, but so that it's like, so you, when you hear it multiple times, then you start making, so it starts making sense, right? What systems do you need to build? How can you automate delivery right now? Those are things that you need to really be thinking about. And then when I talk about investing, right? How do you, like, you first of all have to define your investment criteria. So where can you start realistically today with where you are? As you're doing all those other things and you still want to build, you still want to be investing. If you did an audit right now, you looked at kind of your finances, where you are, what can you put into investing? And then when you figure that out, then figure out the growth vehicle that you want to do. So what vehicle do you want to use to start investing, to start growing wealth, to start building passive income? Think about that. That's a lot of the things that I want to kind of unroof in you. I want you to start thinking about it. I want you to start questioning what you're doing, because that's the only way that real growth will happen. And that's the only way you'll start truly building your freedom. So these are some of the metrics that we use to really measure wealth that really serves your freedom. We've talked about it. We'll talk about it again. Time. Your income per hour. What is that? Is what you're doing today really worth your time? Think about like your leverage ratio, right? Your skills, your expertise, your time, and then person. Think about how you can leverage those things, your skills, expertise, time, and then person. Those are important, or people. Who, not how. Remember, I talked about that. And then when I think about automating, right? Use AI to your benefit. We're at a time where, AI is not going to replace us and what we do on our skills, but like it can augment and it can help you make your life easy. So why not get some of that time back? And then when you think about, value creation, right? Think about how you can scale. Think about what your growth potential is, what you're creating, and then impact metrics. Those are things that you have to be thinking about. And then when you think about freedom, like I said, independent of where you are, knowing that you can still have flexibility, you're still building wealth. That is what it should look like. So now, this is kind of the part that I'm really excited about, because this is where it becomes really tangible and you could take it home. So like I said, this is where possibility becomes reality. We talked about space design, and we talked about, kind of how you can build wealth using those same principles. And I really want us to bring it together right now. So this is, I think, the fifth part of the workbook. And this is your freedom design workbook. Find somewhere comfortable. If you are somewhere comfortable, I want us to spend the next kind of like maybe 10 minutes just transforming everything that we've discussed into a personal action plan. And then we will start wrapping it up from there. But I think this is where kind of it all comes together. So I kind of picked the three of the freedoms, and I did time, financial, and location because we will go into purpose next week. But when you think about, I want us to explore the intersection point between all these freedoms, right? Because I think that's where you'll find some truth, and I think that's where it'll begin to all make sense for you. So for the time freedom transformation, I want us to think in three ways. I want us to think mindset. So this is how you need to change your mindset. I want us to think about strategy. So what do we need? What do you need to do today? And then systems. So for all of these three, and take a screenshot of this. I think this is a really important slide to just take a screenshot because, like I said, you're not going to accomplish all of this today, but you're going to build on this, which is the most important. So it's like pick one part of it and then implement that. So let's go through time freedom transformation. First one is mindset. So I want you to start shifting from, I have to be here to I choose when to engage. So in your time, so you stop thinking like, I'm at work or I have to be here. It's like I'm choosing to be here and I'm going to use that time wisely so that I can so I can buy back some of my time. And then when you think about strategy, right, I want you to start, when you think about time freedom and strategy, start to think about creating protected blocks of time that is aligned with your peak energy. If this is the one thing that you do this week, then that's fine. If you think, I want to work on buying back some of my time, I need to spend some time and just create power blocks where I can go, where I have peak energy to think, to dream, to create, to act. I think that would be a win. I think I know. But then think about systems, right? I want you to start building support structures that run without your presence. That's exactly the whole purpose of a system. I don't need you anymore because I have spent the time to build something, that now runs on its own. So if you're already doing something, if you already have something in place, maybe you think about creating systems. Maybe this is the time that you start thinking about how you can build systems so that you can then take your time back to do something else that matters. That's what it looks like when you think about the intersection between time freedom and how you can transform your life. So when we think about financial freedom, when you think about mindset, I want you to start moving from hours equals money to value equals wealth. We have talked about value so much because it's so important, because people truly value, right? And if you can figure out how to give that, you can easily turn that into wealth. And so stop thinking about like hours from money anymore and figure out how you can create value then that you can then turn into wealth. And that's a mindset. That is a very big mindset shift. And if that's the only thing that you work on, I think that you will be successful, because then you can now approach everything else with that mindset. So think about, from a financial freedom transformation standpoint, think about strategy. So think about designing, revenue streams that compound over time. And when you think about the compound effect, right, it's one small thing that you add, and then you add to that. And so then you see exponential growth. So today, that pot might look small, but I promise you that in like 5-10 years, you will be astounded. You will be impressed. You will be amazed as to what you started. But the strategy is that you have to start somewhere. So you have to start thinking about how you can design revenue streams that will compound over time. And then with that, when you start thinking about systems, right, you're starting to think about how you can create assets that generate income while you sleep. This one's a little bit more work. But when you understand your mindset and then you figure out your strategy, the systems will come. But again, I'll say it, you'll keep hearing me say this again. It's one thing. So you pick one thing and then you build on that. So when we move on to location freedom, the mindset change is like you have to start breaking free from I have to be there to like I can impact from anywhere in the world. So if your dream is to spend 6 months in a different country, living and working, then you have to change your mindset to like, I don't have to be, in Houston, or I don't have to be where I am right now. I can impact from anywhere. And then with that, you have to, when you think about strategy with location, think about building an influence that like transcends physical presence. So you've started to build, you're building something that you don't have to be there to be able to influence it. It's like works when you're not there. The strategy is in place, the people are in place when you're not there, and it's working for you. And then when you think about like systems, think about creating like digital frameworks that will expand your reach. So now, whatever it is that you're doing, remember again, I told you it's one to many. So you're no longer, you don't have to be stuck in this place to do it. Now you're creating digital frameworks that will help you expand your reach. This matrix that I shared with you on the screen is not theory. Each intersection point represents a specific transformation in your life. The question is, are you going to do it? I will tell you this, that like it's very important, if you do this really well, that you will be able to build on this. So I spent some time and I added this framework towards the end. And so I created this whole matrix and I want to send it to you. So it's missing from this section of the workbook, but I will add it and I will make sure that I send it to everyone who's here tonight. But remember, choose one intersection, just one, that will create the biggest immediate impact in your life. So what is that one thing that you need to do that will then create the chain reaction, the domino effect that will allow other things to take flight? It is just one. It's not all 9 of them, it's just one. Choose that for you. Figure out that chosen intersection. But if you don't, I want to ask you a few questions, right? What is stopping you from doing that right now? What's holding you back? I told you earlier that like, if you keep thinking later, it's going to steal your whole life, because later turns into a week, which turns into a year. And before you know it, like that dream is dead, So, and then think about like, what's possible if you made this shift? Like if you had the opportunity to dream and to create, like what's possible if you decided to do this? And then I want to ask you this. And for those of you who are like, yes, I'm going to do this. What is the first action step that you want to take? What is that one thing that you're like today? If you want to put it in the comments, if you want to put it in the chat, just tell me one thing that you're going to do. And maybe if you told me that one thing, you might inspire someone else to take action. But what is that one thing that you want to do today that is going to move you forward? And lastly, I'll say this, right? This builds on each other. So this shift, this matrix, if you pick one, it then builds on the other. So when you work on strategy, then it will help you change your mindset, and then you can build systems. So that's how you have to start thinking about it. Start with one intersection, master it, and then expand it. So then take it to the next level, because that's how we're really going to start seeing growth. Okay, so this is now that we've kind of talked through that, the questions that I kind of want you to think about again is like, when are you at your best? What's your most protective time, right? Where is your, what's your first freedom project that you want to tackle? We just went over the freedom matrix. And now all I want you to do is just pick one and then implement it. That's the first step that you'll take. Pick one and then start doing it. And when you start doing that, you will start seeing success, because success builds on itself. And that's when you start seeing change, and then you can go and start implementing it. And then you will really see how it impacts your life and others. So this is, I just want you to think about when you start dreaming big, right? When you start creating big goals, you need support, but you need support from the right people. So it's easy for you to, you might tell a close friend and they might not understand. They might think that your dream is too big and you might not realize it. And so you have to pick people who want to be on this journey with you, who want to grow with you, who want to build an expansive life just as you're doing the same thing. So those are the type of people that you want as implementation partners, the people that you will hold you accountable. And some of them are in this webinar, so if there's someone that you're seeing who's been responding in the comments and you're like, maybe, like, let me figure out who this person is, let me try to build. And then in the expansive circle, you will also have access to accountability pods. And so you can also use that. So the steps I would say is like the first thing to do is when you find your implementation partner, your accountability buddy, is to share your freedom block. So what are you doing? How are you going to, like, what are the first steps that you're going to take? Exchange contact information and like figure out a time to meet so that you guys can keep each other accountable. And then over the week until we meet next week, think about like, check in, think about like weekly metrics tracking. And then the last one is like, just know that you have resources. So in the community, which towards the end, and I think we're getting there, a few more slides, I'm going to put the link again so that you can get access to that. And that's where you'll start seeing a ton of the freedom design templates. You'll see a lot of the implementation guides, and you'll get expert support as you're figuring out how you want to grow, as you're figuring out how you want to go to the next step, or you want to move to the next level, or you want to impact larger. We have all of that for you. Okay, so with your partner, and your partner might not be here tonight, but pick a partner. What did the next 72 hours look like? Plan it hour by hour. Maybe not tonight, but tomorrow morning, as you start to plan out your day, right? Figure out a time that you can block out so that you can start working and start building. So the first step is like day one is set up, right? Figure out your boundaries, prepare your space, block out your freedom time, because this is then the opportunity for you to start thinking and for you to go back to that matrix and figure out how you're going to grow your life. And then day two is your first implementation. It's just execute what you said you were going to do. Document the results and then adjust. It might not go well the first time, but that's okay. Like a journey of 1,000 miles, it started with one step. That simple, that easy. And so day three, I want you to lock it in, right? Refine your approach, share your wins, and then plan next week. That's how you're going to start doing this. And if you just did this one step at a time, you're going to grow. You will inevitably grow. Okay, so how are we going to do this, right? We designed, like you and I, we just spent this evening designing this freedom blueprint, right? You have the tools, you have what you need to build. So I want you to make sure that you have success over the next 7 days. So we did 72 hours, and the next 7 days is just like your 72-hour sprint. And then the days after that, I just want you to refine and adjust what you're already doing. So, and then right after that is like expand and prepare and adjust what you've already done. That's exactly what it looks like while we get ready for session 3. So we talked about your complete support system, right? You're going to find it inside of the community. So in the community, you're going to have, your freedom check-in. That's one of the things that you're going to have. You're going to have implementation support, like we talked about. You're going to have wins where we can share all our wins. And then inside of the community resources, right? You're also going to have a freedom design templates, all the implementation guides, and then like direct support access. And then, of course, you're going to have like your success partners. We'll have group coaching calls. And so that's what it looks like when you start thinking about joining the community. And I just put the link up again, so you have access to that. And like I said, for all of those who are just joining, if you are one of the first 50 people to join, you will get full 1-year access for free. So that's, and the code for that is founder. So if you didn't hear it in the beginning, you can jump on that again for those of you who joined in late. But before we wrap up, I want to acknowledge what you've created today. In the last like hour and 10 minutes, you created your freedom design blueprint. You scheduled your first freedom blocks, or you thought about it and you're going to go do it. You're planning on joining the community to get accountability and support. And then you're going to plan, or you've already planned your next 7 days. Yes, I use the word plans, but these aren't just plans, right? They're the foundation for your expanded life, for the expansive life that you want to live, for the impact that you want to make. It starts now. It has to do with you putting in the work, but like the results can be really, really fantastic. But you have to do the work in the beginning. So we talked about all of this week. This is what to expect next week. So now that you've kind of designed everything's going to start coming together, right? So next week, everything that we've designed gets supercharged, and we're going to start activating your unique purpose. That's why I pulled purpose out, because we're going to build on that next week. So think about like your impact amplifier. So how will you now maximize your contribution? So as you're building, how are you going to contribute? And then think about building impact that's going to outlive you. That's the next step. And then I want you to start thinking about how you can align your passion with prosperity. So think about like your purpose, what your purpose is, what your passion is. Then if you align that with the work, I think that you will be, I know that you'll be successful. And then thinking about like creating sustainable growth that doesn't end when we stop, but that keeps going. So I'm really excited, because it's all going to come together. And I think that it's very important. So as you go back and you put in the work and you come back next week, it starts building on each other. And that's when you really start seeing exponential growth. So as we end, I want you to kind of look at your freedom design template that you built. It's not just paper. It feels like your declaration of independence from the old way of success, the old way that you were doing things, and now thinking about really building an expansive life. I'll share my story with you. So when I first started my freedom journey, right, someone shared something with me that I'll never forget. And he told me, freedom isn't found, it's designed. And I shared that with you earlier. But today, you created your design. It's now kind of in your psyche, in your head, in your mind, in your heart. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up at 6 a.m., for those early risers, or 5, you have a choice, right? You can follow your old patterns, and do what you've always done, or you can stay in the comfort of what you know. And you can do that. And maybe that will get you a little far in life. But what if you can step into this new freedom protocol that you're creating and execute on what you've created today, and then begin to make impact on where you know is possible, where you know you can go, where you know you can grow? That's the idea of what we're creating here. So this blueprint is ready. Your support system is activated. We are here. The community is available for you. The path is clear. But I want you to remember this, right? It's not about getting more done. It's about doing what matters. That's the most important thing. It's like, where do you need to find the freedom that will take you to the next step, to the next area of growth in your life that you're trying to achieve? On that note, I will see you next week. That's when we activate purpose and we amplify your impact. That's what next week is going to look like, and I'm pretty excited about it. So I want to say thank you for the time, for spending this hour and 15 minutes with me. I really appreciate it. And I want to say this: I want you to let your expansion begin. It started last week. We're building on it, and we're going to take it next week and the week after. So at this point, I'm going to stop. And I want to know if you have any questions. If there's anything that I missed, Salma, you're very welcome. If there's anything that I missed, if you guys have any questions at all, I'd love to answer it. Pandora, you're very welcome. If anybody has any questions at all, I want to take a second to just pause and respond to the questions. And yes. So if you want to get a hold of me, if you have any questions that you don't want to kind of write in the chat, that is, you can, like I said, jump in. I'm active in the community, so go ahead and go in there. And then also that's my number, so you can reach me at that. Just call me. We can have a conversation on how you want to grow. Perfect. And it just came on the screen again. So if you want to just go ahead and jump on it, and then it's pretty seamless and easy to get into the community. Okay. On that note, I just want to say thank you again for everyone who decided to spend the evening with me. I hope that this was helpful. I hope it was beneficial, and I'm truly excited to know what you come up with and how this moves you forward in life. So on that note, have a wonderful evening.